Hi, Gabriel here, and this is a response to Skull Gladiatoria, who's been making some Rapier versus Katana videos and briefly mentioned Rapier versus Messer, which is one of my favorite methods of sparring, as well as David Rawlings, who responded with a perspective of using a more nimble, less less authoritative sword, in this case a Rapier, against a two-handed sword. And I would like to provide my 2 cents on the topic from the context of Messer versus a sword with a greater degree of reach and hand protection. This isn't a critique on either of them. I was just, by happenstance, making a workshop for using Messers in mixed steel tournaments. This is primarily from a tournament perspective for House of Blades up in Iowa on the weekend of September 9th. So if you're in the area, please hit them up. And House of Blades, also known as Central Iowa Historical Fencing Guild, hit them up. You're more than welcome to show. We take all the people that we can. So coming from a Messer perspective, some context, they will see a lot of parallels with Sword and Buckler within this particular demonstration. I, for one, am in agreement, at least for the time being, with Oscar Terramores of Virtual Effectual, that Lecoukner's Messer tradition derives at least some of its preference for long point from earlier Sword and Buckler treatises. So from there, we're going to start by entering the bind with our opponent and claiming the center line, which in this case will be here. I am then going to start moving to my right. I prefer to move it this way. If you're right-handed, you're more than welcome to take the opposite direction or just continue to move like this. But the reason that I, as a left-handed individual, prefer moving from left to right may become apparent here in a moment. So when we secure this bind, we are going to want to keep we're going to have our hand in the thumb grip. We're going to want to keep our blade in line between where their weapon is and where our hand is, so that way we can use the majority of our hand protection, and with the thumb grip we get as well additional leverage to use to defend our hand and keep it from getting exposed. So we enter the bind, and I'm going to start walking towards my opponent's, in this case, left shoulder. And from here, you may notice again the center line is here. My left side is looking very exposed, particularly my arm. Now, if they decide to dip their blade down to avoid my engagement, often what I'll just do is I'll drop the point down and that'll intercept them. And then I can either switch over to this side and we can continue in that direction, or what happens more often, I would say 4 out of 5 times, is that they will disengage around and try to come after my forearm here. And from there, that is exactly what I'm looking for, actually. I'm using the vulnerability of this side to act as a bait. After I engage the bind, they come around, and I just turn my hips and my torso with a passing step. From here, I have effectively, I'm going to show it again, I'm not moving my forearm, I'm just turning my wrist slightly and rotating my shoulders, and I've once again claimed the center line. And also, because they have a point forward system with a lot of hand protection, oftentimes when attacking, whether it be by just extending or by giving a full lunge, they're going to have forward inertia during this interaction. And so when I do that passing step, and I have their blade secured on the outside of my blade and securing the center line, they are going to be moving towards me and I'm going to be moving towards them. And that creates that gives me a lot of ground and allows me to control the space where I can use my weapon and they can't use theirs very effectively, because now I'm closer, my shorter weapon has an advantage. From here, you can very easily go into a winding thrust or a winding cut, or engage the offhand and move in accordingly, or whatever permutation or variation you find appropriate for you. With this technique, I found it very reliable. You can look at my Donnybrook 2022 tournament videos. I use this extensively in pools. I went up against a Army Sword and Buckler, Basket Hilt Sword, and Basket Hilt Sword and Buckler, and I swept that pool with just a messer. So it's a very consistent and applicable technique of just rotating the shoulders to control your center line and dipping the blade down to cover your lower lines if need be. Not nearly as complex as, for example, the Streza systems, but it's just a very simple, very reliable technique. I'm sure that there are better ways to approach it, but this has worked for me in the past, and I imagine will continue working. So that has been my demonstration of Messer versus Rapier in one of my go-to techniques. I hope that you enjoyed. Please share the video, subscribe, all that. But also, please feel free to share and respond with your techniques of how you overcome matches where you're at a disadvantage, be it in reach and hand protection, if they have an offhand weapon, etc. And yeah, hope to see you guys in tournaments or online or hopefully in person in classes soon. Peace.